Hi there, good evening everyone. So now that we are done with the SNAP analysis, I hope you're ready to focus on the next exam, that is IIFT. So now that we are done with, where is this echo coming from? Okay, I found it. So how did the SNAP go for those of you who've written it today? और वैसे तो 18 को खैर साथ में लगे हाथ स्नैप भी है, तो ऑब्वियसली दोनों चीजों की शायद कुछ लोगों को अभी भी जरूरत पड़े, but that's how it is, that's how it's going to work, right? So you know what we plan to do today, right? We have this simple enough session called Last Lap to IIFT, where today we'll focus on an area that you are already very comfortable with, and that area is called reading comprehension. So yes, you have worked on RC for the CAT exam extensively, but then when it comes to IIFT, you do need to make some minor adjustments, some minor changes. I will set your expectations accordingly, and that will ensure that you are able to come up with the right kind of strategy to use for the IIFT entrance exam. So those of you who are already subscribed to our channel, well, you are practically a family. Good to see you back again. In case you are somebody who is new, why don't you subscribe the channel and press the bell icon? That way we not meet each other accidentally. We will meet each other by design. And apart from it, if you have any question, any concern, please make sure that you ask those, and I would love to handle those as well. Mandeep has a question. Will it be useful for SNAP? Mandeep, last year we did not get any RC in SNAP, so how useful will it be for SNAP? Well, since we are focusing on RC, I am afraid not much. But otherwise, all the other exams that you write, okay, so IIFT, SNAP, ZAT, CMAT, TISNET, whatever, you'd still be dealing with reading comprehension, and we go ahead and work on this. Hardik, I don't see that happening big time. I don't think so. So you'd always have some scaling. Now, personally, I believe that it is a black box, but let us see. My philosophy generally is that now that the exam is done, let us move on. यार हमसे अपना काम कितनी मुश्किल से होता है नहीं? अब रिजल्ट निकालना, स्केलिंग करना, ये सारा आईएम वालों का काम है, उन्हें करने देते हैं, हम अपना काम करेंगे यार बस, ठीक है? तो उससे बात बनेगी. Yes, yes, there is negative marking in IIFT. Absolutely. Okay, so here we go. So why are we together this evening? We have a very straightforward agenda for the session. We will look at the type of passages and the questions that we get asked in IIFT, and additionally, we will talk about some of those tricks to solve RC questions, but that is something that you hopefully already are an expert of. However, there is no harm in refreshing that. So, first up, let us get introduced or reacquainted to the English section in the IIFT exam. So, what do we have there? So, you typically get 35 questions. Out of these 35, if I look at last year, 16 happened to be reading comprehension questions, whereas the remaining were verbal ability questions that included grammar, vocabulary, fill in the blanks, etc. And since we are focusing more on RC, here is the further breakdown of reading comprehension. We got 4 passages in all. Out of those 4, there were 2 passages that had 3 questions each, and then there were another 2 that had 5 questions each. So 16 questions in all, and here is a glimpse of the kind of topics or the kind of areas they test us on. So we had a passage based on consumption of resources, another one based on management, then one from philosophy, then one from communications. So in a way, humanities, right? And as you can see, half of the section was easy, whereas there was one passage which was easy to moderate, and one, surprisingly, I mean, usually IFT passages aren't that difficult, but this one last year turned out to be a doozy for a lot of people. There were students who actually struggled with it. So what are we? So overall, I say that you should expect an easy to moderate exam when you sit in the examination hall next week. Now, one of the characteristics here is that the passages are usually lengthy, or I'd say lengthier as compared to some of these other entrance exams like the CAT or the XAT. Additionally, they are also easy to read. So easy to read in terms of the subject matter, in terms of the language used. So normally, if you're somebody who reads your newspapers and your articles regularly, you'll find it fairly easy to deal with. However, that said, last year we did have this one exception. Remember that passage on management theory? That actually went ahead and troubled quite a few people last year. So with that possible exception, usually they are easy. And not only that, even the questions are direct or fact-based, or at times I end up calling them specific detail questions. So these are questions that most of us find easy. And even if you make a mistake here, it is usually going to be one of those silly mistakes. Jaidev, yes, you definitely, even if you're targeting XAT, you will benefit from this session. However, the difficulty level in XAT usually is a couple of notches higher. So in terms of level, this session may not be a perfect match, but RC is RC, right? So just getting this opportunity to practice together, that does not hurt. So those of you new here, my name is Vikrant, and here is my approach to IFT exam that I think even you can follow. So whenever you start with the VARC section, the first thing that you need to do is passage prioritization. You want to go from passages that are easy and towards passages that are difficult. How do you do that? You do that on the basis of familiarity and the question types. Then step 2, read the passage, but when you read it, do not read it for detail. Read it to get the overview, and thereafter just answer the questions that you can rather quickly. Now, because in IFT time is at a premium, okay, it is still, let's not forget that it is going to put you under that time pressure as well. You would ideally not like to get stuck on any question, right? So these are the 3 simple, straightforward things that I want you to start implementing straight away. We have a question from Darshana Murali Bhaskaran. Ideal attempts for RC. Well, that would actually vary. That will vary because we know that in IFT, we don't have a sectional time limit, though we do have a sectional cutoff. So within the section, you want to score around 20% marks to ensure that you are clear of or safe of the sectional cutoff, that you are above it. But thereafter, it all boils down to maximizing your score. So for those of us for whom English is our strength, English is a strong area, you may want to go ahead and attempt at least around 11-12 questions in RC, if not more. Now, for those of us who do not really count on English as their strength, they can then focus elsewhere. So the equation is a tad bit different from exams like the CAT, where you have sectional time limits. So it will vary. And then I am also fairly skeptical of the word ideal. You know, so ideal is how things should be. So ideal number of attempts is all the questions actually, but fairly good attempt. Usually it is easy, so you should be able to attempt around, all of us should definitely be able to attempt around 8-9 questions. Those of us who are good at English should target 12-13 questions, maybe even more. Yash, here it is on the screen. For all the sections, I mean, it usually remains around 20%. Okay. So Jaydev, as far as RC goes, I think you will find IFT easy. So with a lot of direct questions, you usually won't have to break into a sweat, though you do need to worry about the other areas. And we have conducted sessions on those other areas, and we'll continue to conduct those. So you can tune into those sessions for VA and grammar. So now that we have talked about the approach, let us sit down and solve a few passages together. तुम भी यही हो, मैं भी यही हूँ. Passages देखते हैं, पढ़ते हैं. So on your screen are going to be RC passages. Unfortunately, I won't be able to fit an entire passage on a single slide. So I'll give you a part of the passage on each one of those slides. And remember, these passages are usually on the lengthier side. So typically, we'll end up consuming 6 to 8 slides per passage. Your job is to read whatever comes on your slide and then take out the key ideas from it. And after that, once you've read it, once you've taken the key idea out, just drop in a quick yes in the comment box so that I know that you have read it. And then I'll take you to the next slide. Ready? So there you go. The first part of passage 1, all yours. I'm waiting for the yes from you. When that happens, we can quickly move over. Done? So far you realize we are talking about the participation rate of women in the labor force. So saying poor, very high. Then as the country becomes richer, their participation in the labor force goes down, and then eventually it starts picking up again when the country becomes rich beyond a point. And then there are these statistics that are present to you. Here is the next paragraph, or the next part rather. I have not even divided it by paragraphs. Are we done? So in this particular part of the passage, now we are talking about 90% countries have a law that limit or somehow restrict a woman's ability to work. Then it brings you down to Middle East and South Asia. And from there it brings you down to the Indian economy. Once again, you have a lot of statistics being offered to you. Move on. And here is the next part. So in this particular part, India is being compared to some other countries. Additionally, we are presenting more granular data, 2000 to 2005, and then 2005 to 2014, then urban versus rural gap, and then we are talking about this one bright spot, financial services. So that's like a summary of this entire part for you. And with that, let me take you over to the next part of the passage. So as you can see, this part also gives us more of the same. It talks about aviation sector apart from financial sector, and then it goes ahead and compares India with Bangladesh. In the previous slide, we had this comparison happening among the BRICS countries. And now we have Bangladesh there. And here is the next part. Great, 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 huh? Keep giving me that yes, that makes it easier for me to move over. Okay, so now we are being compared to some more countries. Then there are some reasons that are thrown in for this trend that we have in India. And finally, ILO attributes it to 3 factors. And with that, here is your next part of the passage. Okay, so now this one talks about hurdles, which are legal and cultural. And IMF says laws can be changed effectively. And then the rest of the paragraph talks about the advantages of doing that and how it contributes to the GDP. So if IMF, you have SCAP, and of course you have OECD. And here is your last part of the passage. Done? So now let's have a quick recap. So what did the passage talk about? That's the ability that you and I are supposed to develop, right? Key ideas, overview. So remember we started off by talking about the participation of women in labor force. It is very high in poor countries, and then as the countries become richer, their participation goes down, and then eventually it starts going up again. But from there, from the entire world, we started moving towards Middle East and South Asia. From there, we entered India. Then we compared India with some countries, some other countries that it is clubbed together with internationally, BRICS, and then the immediate neighbors and then not so immediate neighbors. Thereafter, we went ahead and talked about the factors that lead to low participation of women in the labor force in India. Then we talked about how these things can be improved. And finally, we talked about why it should be improved and its contribution to GDP. So that's the kind of idea that I want you to have in your mind when you go ahead and read a passage. At the end of it, this bird's eye view is very important because this allows us to refer to the relevant part, go back to the right part very quickly. So ready for the questions? Here is the first one. What's your answer? Very good, very good. Kodidas Borad. Excellent. It's a fair attempt, huh? So what's your answer for question number 1? So in all of these exams, our focus should be on elimination. You generally find that in an exam like IFT, two options are very easy to rule out because they are not even there in the passage, or at times they even contradict the passage. So for example, this is not given, right? Preference for certain things among women. No, these are reasons cited. Do women actually have it? Some agency feels it, it may or may not be true. But then, so far, all the answers that I have received, Satyansh, Darshana, Yash, Devika, Kodidas, and Gaurav, you are absolutely right. The correct answer is B. So, you know the kind of questions. So, now you know the kind of questions we get in IIFT, right? So, here is your next one. Give this one a shot. It's all about speed. Let me see how fast you can go ahead and answer this particular question. Sorry, I dropped my pen. So, most accurately summarizes. That is, we are being asked for the main idea. So, A, now look at it, A is factually not sound. India has been compared to some other countries but not all. Moreover, remember the example of Pakistan? The rate is improving, albeit they were starting at a lower rate. Their base was small, so they could be still lower than India, right? So because A is not even consistent, you can eliminate it. The richer the nation, the higher the female labor force participation. Oh, remember, even the poorer nations have high participation. The very first sentence told us so. So you can rule it out. And then C. Is there any such distinction made in the passage? The passage does single out Middle East and South Asia, but then are all countries in Middle East emerging, and are all developed countries maintaining a, right? Moreover, come to think of it, is the core purpose to prove that emerging countries are lagging behind? It ends with offering solutions and benefits. And that is why I think most of you, so far, all the answers that I've received are absolutely correct. It should be indeed option D. So you notice it is easy to eliminate. That's what these couple of exams, okay, when I think of IIFT, when I think of TISNET, they're usually easy. Okay, here is your next one. Now, you realize another fact-based or specific detail question. I'm sure if you have a passage to go back to, you can actually solve it very easily, but let me tax your mind. What will you choose as your answer here? Okay, so let me take you back to the relevant part. This is what IMF advised. So, I mean, the only thing that can make this question difficult for you is that you don't have a passage to go back to. But the moment you find that you have a passage to go back to, you realize that the answer is pretty straightforward and it should be option C. Here is the fourth question based on this particular passage, and then we will move over to our next passage. Let me see if you recall something. So in India, between this period, if you remember, 2000 to 2005 increase, but then thereafter from 5 to 14 there was a decline. So we know that overall in this period there was a decline. Now you notice increase, eliminated, no change, eliminated, decline, right, increase, eliminated, and therefore the answer should be C. And here is the relevant part of the passage that we could have referred to as well. Right? So that is why option C. And with that, let us now dive into the next passage. So you already know what it is that I want you to do. I want you to read the passage and keep on generating that mental overview. Okay, so work with me and let's go ahead and read it slide by slide. So here is your passage 2 on the screen. So give it a shot. Yes, yes, Kodidas, this is basically the feature of the IFT exam. You'd find almost 60% of the questions are typically fact-based or specific detail questions. So in the previous passage, you realize that two were definitely direct. One, you had to interpret the passage a bit, and there was one indirect question which tested you or your understanding for the main idea. So that's the kind of exam that you're likely to. These are the kind of questions that you're likely to get. So no, I haven't given you all the questions that are direct. Main idea one was definitely indirect, but yes. Shall we? So the paragraph that you have on your screen, or at least the part that you have on screen, talks about one benefit of literature, and then it changes. Yet literature has more utility to it than is normally known. Here is one example of it, and then there is an extension of that example, right? So here is the next part of the passage. So if you see, the other advantage has been laid bare here. Use of literature in teaching a second language, particularly young adult literature. So then it shifts to, so let's recall, educated can use literature to have a glimpse of the past. However, it has other benefits. For instance, benefits in terms of learning a new language, and even there, young adult literature is particularly useful. Why? So there are manifold reasons. First and foremost, this. And then moving on, so you notice when we read for overview, we just read it and then we realize, okay, second, it's an aesthetic experience, and then the rest of it can be read quickly. Shall we? Okay, here is the next part. Third, so some more benefits of using young adult literature. Fantastic, fantastic, Yash. You're reading at a fair clip. Oh, Kodidas, I'm assuming that you're talking about this particular paragraph. If you've read it this fast, you are doing a phenomenal job of making an overview. This was just an extension, and therefore you could have pushed through it fast. And here comes the next. Oh, here comes the first question now that we are done. Okay, so let's just quickly recall. Literature has certain use for educated people. It has some other uses. For example, somebody wants to learn a foreign language can use literature, particularly young adult literature. And then why young adult literature? Right? So here is your first question based on the passage. So we are being asked in the last paragraph with respect to the inclusion of YAL, the author makes all of the following assumptions except. So an indirect question, you know, an assumption is an unstated premise or an unstated reason to support a conclusion. So let me take you through the last paragraph once. Okay, so this is one part. And here is the other part of the last paragraph. Okay, so now that you've gone through the last paragraph again, what will you mark as your answer? So you notice it can help with their cognitive, their affective development, etc. So definitely makes them more sophisticated. So this can't be the answer we are being asked for, except the author assumes that it will lead to all these benefits. Better their mental perception, yes, this cognitive ability. So this can't be your answer either. YAL can help the learners improve their ability to understand. Of course, yes. So this can't be your answer either. D, the inclusion of YAL can improve the confidence of the learners in dealing with complex classical literature. Does the passage make a claim that if you start with young adult literature, your confidence increases and now you can take on classical literature? This is something that I will term as out of scope. I mean, this argument is not even made in the passage, and therefore this obviously cannot be an assumption made by the author. You don't even have such a conclusion presented, and that is why our answer here should be option D. Now this one tricked you, right? So there were two problems here. The first is except, and the second is, and this is something that I've observed, that at times some of us are not very confident of how they should approach assumption questions. They can be a little tricky. Inference questions are fine. Assumption questions can at times be a bit tricky. So I'd suggest that you practice more of these questions. And don't forget except. Okay, here is the next one. So the first paragraph suggests all of the following except. I can. So what do you think? What's your answer? Just take a shot at it. It's okay. Just tax your brain and see what all you've read with respect to literature. So the correct answer here is option D. Why D? Because D contradicts the passage. So what first paragraph says, it says the opposite of it. Here it is. Have a look at this line. Where did it go? The use of literature in foreign language classroom is, check this, not a novel phenomenon. So it is not a novel phenomenon. Whereas D says it is a fresh development. It is not a fresh development. So this contradicts and therefore has to be the answer. If you look at the rest of the things here, you'd find plenty of these things. Everything else stated here. And because D contradicts, that even becomes the better than any of those other options which are perhaps even tangential. Next question. What's your take? Now, I know that you are challenged by the fact that you don't have the passage, but as I said, I'm just challenging your brain. If the questions are easy, let me test your overview today. Oh, Suhas, I would love to do that. In fact, if you'd look at our YouTube channel, there should be a session that talks about starting your preparation for CAT 23. In fact, oh, you are in second year. You would actually be writing in 24. Why don't you do one thing? Just go to a Telegram channel, Telegram group rather, where you can ask doubts. So post your doubts there. My name is Vikrant. You will find me in that group. So post this query there and tag me. Okay. And I'll respond to you there. I think what you've asked requires a more detailed answer. And you'll find the link to the Telegram group in the description, I hope. No, after the CAT, I think we have a lot of links given to some of the related. You'd find the link of the Telegram group in the description. Just post that question there. Don't forget to tag me and I'll get back to you on that. Okay, so coming back to question number 7, here is the second paragraph. Now you notice it talks about rich and nuanced textual context. It talks about cohesion. It talks about creative use of language in literature, contributing to the spoken language, which basically means that A, B, and C are mentioned. D is not. So it is not literature which is quite relatable. It is young adult literature which is relatable. So very subtle, but a very important thing that was left out of option D. So you notice everything else is here. So the problem with D is that A, it is not a part of the second paragraph. B, it is mentioned elsewhere, but when you check that elsewhere, you realize that they are talking about young adult literature as relatable, not the entire literature. And that is why our answer once again is D. And here comes the next question. We can infer from the passage that the teaching of literature in L2 benefits a learner all of the following except. Let us see. This can also be tricky, but oh yes. Darshana Murali Bhaskaran, that's absolutely correct. The answer here is C. The passage does talk about obviously language, obviously culture. So it just boiled down to C and D. Personal growth is mentioned. Knowledge, ironically, is not mentioned anywhere. And that is why C becomes our answer. I think all of you are getting it right. That's terrific. And with that, let us move over to our third and the last passage. Here you go. So get in that zone, get into that frame of mind, take a deep breath and start reading. So, Bernie Madoff, a lot of entities said that even the family is guilty, though they provided no evidence. And thereafter, you have your second and paragraph along with part of third. Thank you, Yash. Thank you for letting me know. Let's hope that more of you do the same. Okay, so what do we have here? This tells us that never before have we seen the family of a white collar criminal being attacked. Okay, and then the last line talks about exceptions, and that too where criminal charges were actually filed against a close relative who was then pulled to the whipping post of public attention. So, normally family members or never have been the family members targeted in a white collar crime with this exception. So, let's just go ahead and read the rest. Done. So, forget white collar, even in organized crime, people did not question the family or have cast aspersions on the family, even though a realist might have wondered how much they knew about why their husband or father had asked all his closest buddies to wear guns and sleep on mattresses in the garage. Remember, in a criminal family where you may still have some evidences around, but even then, the families were ignored. They were not accused. So in this part of the passage, the attention is now being brought back to Bernie Madoff case, that the family was questioned despite the fact that we had evidence or we had facts that did not seem to be consistent with the family's guilt. So first, they did not run away. Okay, Bernie Madoff may not have run away because he's old. Ruth may not have chosen to run away because she may not have wanted to leave his husband, but his two sons, they did not have any such requirement. So as you can see, this basically says that the sons at least could have run away, but they did not, especially considering their options. And here comes the next part. So then the confession. So some people point holes in the reason behind the confession. The author says that whatever they state is not realistic. Had the family been guilty, confession alone would not have saved them. And with that, let's head over to the last part of the passage. Okay, so some more reasons given by moreover, and then logic aside, assumptions too are faulty or flawed. So there we go. Now that we are done with the passage, let's just recall. The passage is about Bernie Madoff case, where the author says that the family has been blamed, and that has never happened for white collar criminals. Heck, that hasn't happened even for organized mafia. But in their case, it is happening. That too, when the evidence points to the contrary. So, how? Did not run away, confession, etc. Right? So, here is your question number 9 on the screen. What's your answer? So, it is very easy for us to eliminate B. The passage clearly tells us that they had the opportunity and the means. C says they had turned Bernie Madoff in. No, Bernie Madoff confessed. They did not do it. Bernie Madoff do it. So let's eliminate it. So that leaves you with A and D. Bernie Madoff had already pleaded guilty, but then had they been actually guilty, they could have still fled. Merely because Bernie Madoff has said so would not have mattered. And that is why, if we go by the passage, our answer should be option D. They did not flee because they were not guilty according to the author. But that is not given anywhere. That is not a part of A, B or C, and that is why we'll go ahead and mark D as our answer. Here is your next one on the screen. This should be an easy one. Let us see. Okay, so let's dive in. There is absolutely no mention of the family saying anything against those accusations in the entire passage, and that is why you have chosen C, and that's absolutely correct. So it's kind of, I mean, slightly an implication kind of a question, but a fairly easy one at that. Here is your next one on the screen. So, main idea question. So, I mean, if you and I were to write the main idea, I doubt we'd write any of these, but we know that we are supposed to pick up the best option from the given lot, and the best option here, as you've already chosen, is so C or B. Okay, so let us start eliminating. The Madoff crime came to light because of the dynamism of hypermedia. No, the crime came out first. The treatment over the years of organized crime defendants has changed. Is this about organized crime defendants? Media tends to run parallel trials to the court. Families of criminals must also be indicted. No. So I think A and D were easy to rule out. Now it all boils down to B versus C. Now, is the passage talking about organized crime? See, the main focus is Bernie Madoff case, and the Bernie Madoff case is a white collar crime. So what the author has highlighted is that never before has the family of an accused been hounded by the media and the people, the hyper media. But look at this case. So this organized crime helps us eliminate B. So the one that comes closest to it is C, although I would have preferred the term hypermedia. My mistake. I accidentally ended up highlighting B. That's not correct. Okay. The correct answer is C. My bad. And here is the last one. Okay, you've been focusing for such a long time. Just 40-50 seconds more and you should be done. Should be easy. Let us see. Okay, Satyansh has set the ball rolling. Fantastic. So you notice the facts suggest that the family is not guilty. So can I say that option A is false? That is incorrect. Let's look at B. True. C. True. They have always taken interest in the crime, in the mafia dons and criminals, not in their families, but in the criminals. Yes. And Madoff has committed a white collar crime. True. And that is why our answer here should be option A. And before I sign out, if you're considering, if you know somebody who's trying to think of CAT 23, do recommend BYJU'S wholeheartedly. You know that we are the best course available, right? And here are the other sessions that we have planned for you until the IIFT. So tomorrow, modern maths, then a 7-day strategy for IIFT, and thereafter you have this GK. Remember, IFT is one of those exams where you get GK too. So Abhimanyu Rajpurohit sir will take you through the 6 months of current affairs. It will be just the part 1, but you can always tune into the part 2 a day after. Right? So we'll be covering all these things. And additionally, if you want to know the analysis of the IFT exam, you know that we have got you. So the first impressions, detailed analysis, everything will be available on the YouTube channel. So please make sure that you subscribe it. And here is a thought that I want to leave you with. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So make sure that you put in the efforts and create the future of your dreams. So I'd sign out at this note. In case you enjoyed the session, don't forget to hit the like button before you sign out. Until we meet next, take care.